Yeah, it's the Koscielak-Russell thing. We don't even call it a show anymore. It's a thing.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, it's transcended showdom, and now it's thingdom.
Yeah.
You know what's in the headlines? The evangelists. We're hearing about Oral Roberts. His goal was matched yesterday. He continues to fast, but evidently he will not be called home. Jim Bakker, PTL Club.
Not anymore.
Tammy Bakker, Jiffy Pop hairdo, as Robin Williams says.
Pat Robertson wants to run for president.
They're in the headlines. We're going to find out more about the evangelists from Steve Winzenburg. He's a broadcast journalism professor from the University of Wisconsin River Falls. Did his master's thesis on Jim Bakker and the PTL Club. Believe it or not, has listened to this program from the great state of Wisconsin.
He certainly has. His name is Steve Winzenburg. He's a broadcast journalism professor at the University of Wisconsin in River Falls. And he did his master's thesis on Jim Bakker and the PTL Club. And, of course, this has been front-page news for a few days now. He's an expert on TV evangelists, and we're so happy to be talking with him. And he's a fan of this very program.
I sure am. It's good to talk to you, Tim and Ruth.
I hope that doesn't take away from your credibility, but...
Well, it might take away from my paycheck, because now my boss knows that I listen during the daytime, and I should be working.
On the wires, just a moment ago, we have an update coming through the wire services. Jim Bakker's lawyer says that Jimmy Swaggart was behind an attempt to take over Bakker's ministry.
Right.
You knew about this.
Well, I've been on the phone today with the other 2 or 3 professors around the United States who study this. There are really only 3 or 4 of us, and we all pretty much knew that when Bakker first came on and said it was another TV preacher, we knew pretty much it was Jimmy Swaggart, because he's been at odds with Jim Bakker for a long time. The interesting thing is Jimmy Swaggart and Jim Bakker are both from the same denomination, the Assemblies of God, and they're the only 2 major TV preachers who are from the same denomination.
Yeah. Now, there is a difference between the fundamentalists, basically, and the Pentecostal types, the Assemblies of God, for example.
That's what was so surprising about Jerry Falwell being named head of the board at PTL, because in the evangelical spectrum, Jerry Falwell is very, very conservative, doesn't believe in any speaking in tongues, any emotions being shown. And then Jim Bakker is way at the other end, where he's speaking in tongues, faith healing, all the emotional aspects that come with the charismatic movement.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Bakkers? I guess I'm interested in, not to be crass, but how much money we're talking about in these, these various evangelists. How much are they making?
Right. Well, the Bakker organization takes in about $130 million a year, but that's nothing compared to Pat Robertson, who takes in about $220 million. They all take, other than Pat Robertson, the 5 other main TV preachers take in between $100 and $120 million usually. But what do they spend their money on as far as their private lives go? I think, Ruth, that's what you're interested in.
You know me.
They have a $400,000 home in Palm Springs. That's where they're hiding out right now. They have a $340,000 home in Charlotte, North Carolina, where it's the headquarters of their ministry. They used to own twin Rolls Royces, but they got rid of those because they got so much flack. They also used to own a condominium in Florida, a $440,000 condominium. They got in lots of trouble in 1982 for that. The Charlotte Observer exposed that, and they ended up selling it. Also, Jim Bakker's hobby, is tinkering with antique Mercedes. Nice hobby. And Tammy's hobby, which is, in addition to putting on makeup, she loves furs and diamonds. That's the lifestyle that they live. But I also don't want the message to come across that all they're interested in is material things. I think they are very sincere people. They went to Bible college in Minneapolis, and Tammy grew up in a very poor home in northern Minnesota, where she brags about the fact that they didn't have indoor plumbing. And now she said she deserves this lifestyle because she works harder than Johnny Carson. That's what she says.
Is there any indication how much of the money raised goes to actual humanitarian causes, and how much of that money raised goes to perpetuating the actual broadcasts?
Yeah,
which is very
somewhere
expensive.
between 90 and 95% of each ministry's money that they take in goes to the administrative costs of buying airtime, paying salaries. For instance, at PTL, they have 2,000 employees. They have that huge Heritage USA, which is the 3rd largest theme park in the United States. Obviously, they have to have a lot of money. So when you only take in $129 million a year, almost all of that is going to go to administrative costs. They do have some mission concerns, and they send a small percentage, and we've estimated that at about 5%.
Well, the other thing, though, is just that, let's say I'm a TV evangelist and I'm raking in, $100 million a year. how do I decide how much is my salary? You know, I mean, I can say, hey, I think I'm worth $75 million this year.
Well,
that's what I have a problem with.
But that's why they have boards of directors. What they claim is that the board of directors sets up their salary. For instance, with Jim and Tammy, they each get a salary that's a little less than $100,000. But then in addition to that, they also get the house. They get cars. Anything that's donated by the viewers, maybe a car or a fur, something like that, is not included in that. So they could be making, you know, upwards of $500,000 a year just from all these different things that are accumulated, even though their base salary is down below $100,000.
Isn't it safe to say that the faithful supporters of these television ministries really don't begrudge the wealth that these people have, and in fact would continue to support these organizations in spite of all of the facts and figures that you might have?
But you have to understand that theologically, they see Jim and Tammy's beautiful homes as being God's blessing, especially in the Assembly of God type charismatic movement. If God is blessing you, he's going to show that materially. A lot of us would have a real problem with that. A lot of the mainline denominations have a big problem with that. Just because you've got a lot of nice material things doesn't necessarily mean God approves of you. But that's the way that the viewers of those programs generally feel. And that's why they aren't upset when Jim and Tammy have a nice home or have a nice car.
In fact, they will talk about their material goods on the air with a great deal of pride.
And they'll talk about the successful people. In my study that I did for my master's thesis at the University of Minnesota, I had to categorize the different things that they did on their program. And one of the things they do most often is bring on successful people who have given their lives to God and then suddenly became rich or famous. It's kind of the lifestyles of the rich and famous with a religious slant. That's what the programs are all about. If you believe in God, then they believe your life will be turned around and you'll have a success.
We're talking with Steve Winzenburg. If you just joined us, he is a broadcast journalism professor at the University of Wisconsin in River Falls and did his master's thesis on Jim Bakker and the PTL Club, is an expert on TV evangelists. Would you say, I guess I want to ask you about Oral Roberts, but I just thought of an interesting thing. Is Billy Graham, you think, in this same ilk, or is he different?
In terms of what he does with his money?
I don't know. Would you group him with the rest?
Well, okay, what I did, for instance, in my master's work, I grouped them into 3 different categories. Billy Graham is in a unique category because he only has occasional TV specials. Billy Graham's major use of a medium is radio, and he's always said that he raises most of his money and he gets most of his listeners from radio, not from TV. So he's in one category where he's just an occasional TV special. The second category is the Sunday morning preacher like Jerry Falwell or Jimmy Swaggart, who gets up and basically televises a TV service. It's his church service on Sunday morning. Then the third category is the Jim Bakker and Pat Robertson, who do daily talk shows, who have their own religious networks on cable. And that's where you can't say that Billy Graham fits in with the rest of these guys because he does something a little bit different than the other ones do.
So is Jim Bakker out of the picture completely? You think he'll be back with his show despite the scandal in his life?
Well, he and Tammy were on yesterday morning, already on tape. I predicted on Friday in a radio interview that Jim will be back within a year, either at PTL or he'll be back in some other ministry. Maybe you're not aware of it. This is the 3rd time he's actually had to quit a TV ministry.
No, was it all because of...
No, it wasn't because of the sexual scandal. In 1972, he had to quit CBN. You know, he started with Pat Robertson. Jim Bakker and Pat Robertson started CBN together. He had to quit because they disagreed about some theological things. In 73, he went out to California and started the Trinity Broadcasting Network, which is a cable network. It's in about 6 million homes. And after a year, the board of directors kicked him out because he couldn't handle the money. In 74, he went to Charlotte and started PTL, and now he's kicked out of there. So this is the 3rd time, and he'll be back. He's been back in the past, and he'll be back now.
When you live in a country like America, who's to say that anything is wrong with any of this? Because the people will watch the show, be entertained.
Right. It is good entertainment.
Get some solace, and I guess it's up to each and every American to decide whether they want to continue to support an individual like any of these.
I was listening to a commentary, though, on television, and they said with the Oral Roberts thing that went on, and now Jim Bakker and Pat Robertson running for president, that maybe the evangelists were in danger of losing their credibility. What do you think?
I think those who were skeptical in the past are just going to have their skepticism reinforced. they'll just become more skeptical. Those who believe in the TV preachers will just believe in them all the more because they'll see that they're just human beings like you and I are.
Yeah.
They have the same problems that we do.
What about the image of that I think people have is it's little old ladies giving away their pensions to these evangelists. Is that true or not?
That's actually true. About 70% of the audience for religious programs is made up of elderly females who are on a fixed income. So that is true. That's not to say that there aren't yuppies watching the program. Obviously, there are some upscale younger people who are watching the program. But in general, yes, most of them are elderly females on fixed income.
That's amazing.
Is there any official problem with this? In other words, is there congressional action?
Legal problems?
Legal problems?
Very definitely. Very definitely. Well, Jim Bakker's past has included an FCC investigation for when he solicited money in 1979 for a missions project and ended up paying off TV time with that money. And the FCC had to investigate him. They ended up dropping it, but only because Bakker agreed to sell the one TV station that he owned. And then in 81, Bakker was in trouble with the IRS because he was accepting property donations and then overvaluing the property. And they kind of slapped his fingers, and he got out of that one. Yes, very definitely there could be some legal problems with this.
Well, we'll keep our eyes peeled to the wire services. We'll find out exactly what Jimmy Swaggart has. He, by the way, vehemently denies the attempt to take over PTL. But he's certain that he is the figure that Jimmy Bakker was talking about.
Well, Jimmy Swaggart did. One thing I do know for a fact, Jimmy Swaggart did call the Assemblies of God and report the rumors about Jim Bakker. We do know that for a fact. He may not have tried to take over the PTL empire, but he did get the Assemblies of God to start investigating Jim Bakker.
Quite a topic.
It is fascinating. Thank you so much. That's Steve Winzenburg, broadcast journalism professor at the University of Wisconsin River Falls and an expert on the Bakkers and the PTL Club, and we'll keep watching TV. Thanks a lot, and keep listening, Steve.
Thank you, Tim and Ruth.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.